Welcome to the iPhoneography podcast. My name is Greg McMillan. This is episode 127. And Dave is having some audio issues, so we're going to start without him. And tonight we are going to get into a conversation about RAW versus ProRAW and probably a few other things. So while we're waiting for Dave, I will bring in my guest this evening, and it is Paul Stolyarov. I think I got that right. Hi, Paul. How are you?
Good. Hello, Dave.
Good.
Greg.
Yeah. So we found each other on Threads of all places, and I think it had something to do with Halide's
Exactly.
new feature that they have in their app called Process Zero, and then I thought I saw some of your posts on there about RAW versus ProRAW and all that stuff. And I thought, well, you know what? That would make a really good topic of discussion for this show. So, let's dive into it. First of all, let's, give everybody just like in a tweet, who you are and what you do.
I'm actually a professional photographer. I do shoot professionally, portraiture, or a lot of real estate pictures. However, mobile photography has been my baby for a long, long time. And I like taking pictures with the mobile because it kind of gives you troubleshooting. I'm kind of very mechanical as I can say person. I like to think, I like to solve a puzzle, and I like photography. So it kind of mobile kind of gives you that both of good worlds in a sense,
Yeah. And you've been shooting with a phone, not necessarily an iPhone for years, but you've been using different phones for years. And I have never really met anybody that's been so diverse in their mobile photography.
Yeah.
With their mobile photography toolkit. But you've been using
shooting with a phone,
iPhones,
not necessarily an
Samsung,
iPhone for years, but you've been using different
things
phones
as far
for
back
years.
as Nexus. You were just telling me before the show.
I have never really.
How has that
met
experience
anybody
been for
that's
you?
been so diverse
switching about
in their mobile photography. So,
with their mobile
to go
photography
back,
toolkit.
I was.
But you've been using.
Let's put it that way. I was
iPhones,
Apple
Samsung,
fanboy, huge Apple fanboy.
Even things as far back as Nexus.
I was actually in line
before the show.
in line to get.
How
3GS.
has that experience been for you?
I was waiting. I didn't
switching
like iPhone 3. So or first one because
go
it didn't
back,
have a video.
I was
copy and
let's
paste.
put
If
it
you
that way.
remember, I know I'm
Apple
that
fanboy,
huge Apple fanboy. But then 3GS
I
kind of
got-
gave you.
I was actually in line,
all those kind of good
in line
things,
to get
right? Video
3GS.
and gaming. I was waiting. I didn't like.
So I bought
iPhone
3GS.
3 and first one because
and
it didn't
3GS,
have
like,
a video.
and back in the
copy
day,
and paste, if you remember,
apps just
I know
start
I'm that
pouring
old.
in
Photography
apps.
But then 3GS
And I wasn't
kind
really
of gave
into
you
mobile photography at
all
all,
those kind of
but
good
I was started
things,
discovering
right?
all
Video
those
mobile
gaming
apps, to edit your pictures.
So I bought 3GS.
Little side note, I still have those
and
pictures,
3GS,
and I'm looking
and
at
back
them.
in the day,
I kind of
apps
scary.
just start pouring
I don't want to even
in
show them.
photography.
I should have. And I wasn't
Yeah.
really into
But you know how many
filters
we
used to apply? I started discovering
Oh,
all
yes.
those mobile apps.
so
to
that's
edit
how
your pictures.
kind of everything started.
Little side note, I still have
into
those
mobile
pictures, and when I'm
photography,
looking
all
at
those
them,
filters,
I kind of
and
scary.
Instagram kind of came
I don't
on
want to even
board.
show them.
I
If
should
you remember.
Yeah, that's when
back
things
then.
really
But you know how
exploded
many
pretty
filters
good
we
for
used to
mobile
apply?
photography. Oh,
So-
yeah. And I think it was mostly
so that's
the iPhone
how
back then.
kind of everything started rolling into mobile photography. All those
I guess
filters and
that's when I
Instagram
really got
kind of
into
came
it.
on board. If you remember,
And Dave
Yeah,
joined us.
that's
Dave,
when
how's
things
your audio?
exploded pretty good for mobile photography.
Oh,
Yeah.
you're muted. And I
And-
think it was mostly
Okay,
the
can you hear me at
iPhone
all?
back then. Yes, we can.
Okay,
you
so
know,
I
and,
switched out to the old microphone. I
guess
used it earlier
that's
today,
when I really
so
got
I
into
have
it.
no idea what happened there.
Oh, okay.
And Dave joined
Thanks
us.
so much
Dave,
for
how's your
everyone's
audio?
patience on this.
Oh, well, we just figured we'd start it anyway, and
yeah, I'll catch up eventually.
Yeah,
yes, we can.
Okay, so I switched out to the old microphone.
We've been just talking about.
I used it earlier today, so I have no idea what happened there.
Okay.
Thanks so much for everyone's
his
patience
interest in
on
mobile
this.
photography, and
we just figured we'd start it anyway, and
not just
I'll catch up
his
eventually.
time doing mobile photography, and
just to catch you up,
quite
real quick,
interesting.
we've been just talking about
because I'd never seen anybody
how
that
Paul
went back and
started
forth
his
so many
mobile,
times with going from Android
his interest
to,
in mobile
to
photography,
iOS and all that stuff.
He's
So
been
that's
using
pretty
different
cool.
phones,
And
not just
you
iPhones,
guys
throughout
are from
his
the same
time
state.
doing mobile photography, and I found that quite
Pennsylvania,
interesting.
Harrisburg.
Because I'd never seen
We're
anybody
at
that
Paul?
went back and forth so
Harrisburg.
many times.
Not far
okay.
from Harrisburg,
with,
not downtown Harrisburg,
going
but
from Android
close.
to
Okay.
iOS and all that stuff.
15
So,
minutes
so that's pretty
from
cool.
Harrisburg.
Yeah, so lots of wonderful history in Harrisburg. The pictures that you have on your Instagram and that the architecture is amazing. It's kind of like like what we were talking about before with Quebec City. It's in Quebec, up here in Canada, a lot of old buildings and all that stuff. But anyway, I digress. So let's get back into the RAW versus ProRAW thing. So how did you decide to just look into that? And how far have you looked into it?
Pretty heavily, because what happened, to go back to again, iPhone and Android. So I dropped Apple ecosystem completely, iPhone 4S, and I basically sold everything. I just did not like the way Apple behaved in certain way, the lock-ins and everything like that. I know it's a deeper conversation. So I sold everything, and the Samsung basically was my baby since then. I really like the way Samsung has certain features. It has similar functionalities as far as like ProRAW and stuff like that. It's called Expert RAW. So they do have similar functionalities, and it's similar processing actually. Some people say they copy Apple. That's the thing. Let's start a fight here. So what happened is I was very familiar, comfortable using Samsung, and then what happened? I just didn't like. Again, it's another conversation. Just didn't like the way Samsung with there is certain ecosystem kind of started crashing. Lately, there is some merger, some apps from Google started pouring into Samsung ecosystem, and whatever. It's ecosystem conversation. So I dropped last year. So all my pictures, 2024 is basically iPhone 15 Pro Max. So I got back on Apple. I got my iPad, because I'm actually, just to let you know, I'm kind of a tablet person. I don't use laptops or anything like that, because they're just on my shelf. I used to use Samsung Tab. I still have it, but I use iPad for everything. I use for my main shoots. So basically, just in general, mobile is my primary use for everything, day-to-day life. Like iPad, that's my life. I don't have a laptop, and phone is my camera, basically, just for personal use. And so when I got back to iPhone, since I was on an iPhone before, I went to my app store, all your previous purchases and stuff like that. And it's like going back to your own house. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you basically buying a phone again, you open up your app store, your purchases, and you start re-downloading all your apps from 2012, 2013, 14, and you will be shocked how many little things actually have changed. I still use apps that I bought 2012, 2013, camera apps. They're still relevant in 2024. That's the interesting part.
The thing with them is those developers obviously did what they had to do to make them go 64-bit, because there was a lot of apps that went away when I think it was the iPhone 5S came out, and they changed everything from 32-bit to 64-bit, and if the developer didn't change it, their apps died. And one of my favorite ones was Auto Stitch. It was a panoramic app, and they didn't do the change, and they disappeared. So that's all part of it. So I'm surprised at so many of them that they work for you, but that's awesome. That's cool. It's really neat. And I guess all you had to do really was sign into your Apple ID, the one that you used back then.
Absolutely. So I signed in. I got my Pro Camera Pro.
Yeah.
Pro Camera. I think it is called Pro Camera. I have it right here. Pro Camera, which is Pro Camera. It is. Yeah. So Pro Camera, it's still in up to date. Everything is, all the functionality is still there. That's basically my main camera that I use now. Mm-hmm. And since I dropped iPhone and I never used ProRes or ProRAW, because I skipped those generations, and so when I got iPhone back, I have to kind of discover those features again. Not again, they were kind of basically brand new to me, and I wanted to know how good they are actually, comparing it to what I was using with the Samsung, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so Expert RAW, it does processing just like ProRAW, but I mean, it's obviously it's not going to be identical, but I guess to say which one is better is pretty subjective, because I really like the iPhone for the way it renders the image. I find Samsung is a little more higher contrast, a little more saturated. Like when you see these comparison videos on whenever like these new phones come out and they compare one to the other, and they do, I forget whose channel it is, but on YouTube there's a channel that does generally 2, maybe even 3 phones at the same time, and so they take pictures and they put them all up on the screen, and you got to pick what one you like the best. Well, I could pick the iPhone picture out probably 90% of the time, just because I know how it renders the image, and it's more pleasing to me. I like it better. You ever see those videos, Dave?
Yeah, I think that's Max Tech.
It could be, yeah.
Because I've seen them where they actually have, okay, well, here's the photo. Which one is which? Yeah. And then after the end, they say, well, and a lot of times it's like, which one do you like better also?
Yeah.
And then it's like it kind of equate the food. It's a blind taste test.
Yeah, that's right.
It's like, okay, you don't know what I took to switch, but which camera do you like better, A or B?
Yeah.
And then they go and I like the detail on this, or this is like you said, overblown, which I can understand from Samsung's point of view, because historically, because remember back when we used to have, at least on the Android side, options. With at least in the US, you had more options than you do now. So they had to get that image to really, yell at you almost in a sea of cell phones. So just like they do with their TVs, it's overblown, it's overdriven, it's a way to get your attention. And it's a very attention. I mean, if someone takes a picture on their Samsung phone and they show it to you, it really pops at you, which is a great marketing tool. But if you're looking more for, I want to make it a little more realistic, not as much pop, that's the iPhone tuned that way. So it's kind of really, it's almost a difference with music, if you will. It's really hard to say, is this better than this? Is what you like better? Because they've gotten, both cameras are really good.
Oh, yeah.
Even the Pixel, that has gotten a lot better than it was.
Yeah.
I mean, they're really, really heavy on the AI and the machine learning, and manipulating
the-
it in software
The
versus
Pixel's
hardware.
becoming an AI machine, but
Yeah.
but the raw capture, I mean, one would think that it would be almost like apples to apples. Not that we're just because we're an Apple show here, but you would think that raw capture would be very similar, even on the two different kinds. Like let's go Apple versus or iPhone versus Samsung Galaxy. You've compared them, have you, Paul? The raw files
did.
from one to the other.
Yeah, I did. I still have raw images. So what happened is if you open up Lightroom and bring raw images into Lightroom, like a full version of Lightroom, and look at the iPhone metadata or Pixel metadata or Samsung metadata. What am I? I'm blanking on the name. The mosaic. That's the word.
Yeah.
Familiar with that. So what happened is iPhone and Pixel are true sensor, and again, you can verify. You can go on if someone can want to verify or dig that deep in Lightroom. You can kind of see that Samsung actually raw images are actually somewhat processed. They're not true raw images like a sensor data. Versus, and they are DNG. You get like raw because Samsung has actually Expert RAW, which is like a ProRAW equivalent function, and Samsung actually has a raw functionality, just a regular Pro mode. It's not going to stack any images and stuff like that. But even though you take a picture with that Pro mode, it's still Lightroom reads it as being processed. I don't know why. I'm not sure what Samsung does to it, honestly. However, iPhone and Pixel, they're more sensor data.
Yeah, and funny you just mentioned that about Lightroom sees as being a process file. A few days ago, I took 7 different camera apps, set them to RAW, not ProRAW, but just bare RAW, and I took a shot with each one, and they all look very, very similar. Now, there was one that I used called First Light. It's from Filmic Pro, and what I noticed with it was it must have been. It didn't say it was a Pro RAW. I set it to just RAW. I did not set it to Pro RAW, but it had the full 48 megapixel resolution in the DNG file. So I think it must have been a Pro RAW file, but it looked very, very similar to the rest of them. It didn't look like it had, HDR applied to it, all that stuff. So I've got to deep dive into them images a little more and, see what happened there. But what we should do really is back up a little bit and talk about the differences between RAW and Pro RAW. We can get into the, I probably don't have the knowledge to do it, but to get into the demosaicing and all that stuff. But basically, the difference between RAW and Pro RAW, in my mind, is that RAW is the raw data on the sensor, from the sensor. It's a single shot. A Pro RAW is that, but it has what I call Apple's magic sauce applied to it. It has the HDR, it has noise reduction, it has deep fusion, it has all that stuff applied to the image. And the purpose that, like, the recent Apple made this, they worked with Adobe to make this type of DNG file, and it's just proprietary to iPhones. But they did that, and their marketing ploy was it gives you a head start on the editing process, which it does. I mean, but you can do more with a ProRAW file than you can with a JPEG or a hike file, and I find them very versatile in that way. But since I've been shooting just straight RAW lately, I'm really liking what I get. So, can you kind of dissect that any further, Paul, as far as what the differences are between the two?
Yeah, so I've taken some pictures. It's on my actually on Threads. If someone wants to go and kind of, it's not too complex, but it kind of gives you an idea. Like I said, I've been taking examples just because I didn't know what good of a quality you get from ProRAW or RAW. Is it even worth shooting ProRAW? Well, let me go back just a step back. When I got iPhone 15, when I bought new iPhone, so I started like shooting ProRAW just nonstop. That was my basically choice of a file, just a ProRAW all day long. And what I found that since I had that camera app that I used to that I bought before, and even regular iPhone camera, I was testing both. And when we were traveling. So when you're changing actual exposure, I was changing exposure, just, maybe manual, because I was shooting in manual, full on manual. I was changing ISO and the shutter speed, but I was shooting in a ProRAW. But my images were very inconsistent because like my histogram was showing one thing, but my images ended up looking totally different in the Lightroom. And I couldn't figure out what's going on. I've listened podcasts with actually Halide. His name is Ben Sandowski, I guess his name, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So I had to like dig YouTube videos from, way back. He did few podcasts like years ago when ProRAW was introduced. And so what he was kind of explaining the way ProRAW works, and what he said that when you start messing with exposure and shooting ProRAW, you're actually changing because you're shooting multiple images. Your iPhone shoots, 5 or so many exposures. And basically when you actually start adjusting exposure manually yourself, you actually breaking that algorithm, the way everything is combined. You're basically changing one of the layers exposure, but not the whole stack. And the whole thing kind of falls apart. And I was getting very inconsistent results, and I couldn't understand what's going on. Why I'm shooting in the manual mode, I know exactly what exposure according to histogram I should get. I was getting totally different results. And that's where I start kind of digging in. I'm like, what's going on with the ProRAW? Something's more. It's not just a raw image. Something's more to it. And that's where his explanation was, there's a stack of images and all this stuff, deep fusion, noise reduction, and all this stuff. And I took some examples, and I found that shooting just a regular iPhone app in a ProRAW with just point and shoot, that's the best result you're going to get.
Yeah, that's I wonder, I can't see Apple being, cheeky about that and making sure that they get the best one. But I find if I shoot a RAW, it usually gets a little overexposed. I'm finding I'm underexposing by 2/3 to a full stop. But with ProRAW, you don't have to do that. And ProRAW looks just like a JPEG when you look at it on the phone. So it's no surprise to me to hear you say that you always found there's something different, like in what you thought you were going to get. Just real quick here, Dale Lotherington in the chat says, when we were talking about the differences between the raw files from one phone to another, one brand to another, the hardware would be different, so it would handle it differently. Even in its raw state, there's still computational aspects applied. That is even longer, shoots raw, but it has even longer magic baked in. So yeah, I mean, even longer is a long exposure app, so it's bound to have some computational stuff baked into the raw file. But I mean, it's like the iPhone with a night mode shot. You could take 30 seconds, still come up with a DNG file, but it's basically it's still ProRAW. And Dwight says he just took a shot with First Light RAW, compared it to the Reflex RAW. First Light was 48 megapixel. When he compared the two, it appeared that First Light at least applied noise reduction. So yeah, that tells me that that's a ProRAW file. If it's done any kind of noise reduction like that, it's a ProRAW file. So you've been shooting just straight RAW for some period of time now? Just
Yes. So again, I will probably refer people to Threads, and you can kind of see that this is exactly what people found in noise reduction. It's kind of a first clue. It's a ProRAW shot.
There's a link. There's a link to your Threads real quick here. There's a link to your Threads account in the description of this video right now, and it'll be in the show notes once the podcast hits the podcast airwaves there. So
yeah, so there was a post on April, right? No, I'm sorry. What am I? I'm on a different time zone. not August 5th that I've posted, and there's one shot kind of shows you in a zoom in version, and there's a pillar of the buildings, and you can kind of see that those pillars in the ProRAW very soft. There is a noise reduction done to them. It's obvious. If you just look at those pictures on Instagram, you probably would never see the difference. You really have to zoom in 100% to see the difference.
Yeah.
And another problem what I've found with the ProRAW, ProRAW does not handle shadows well. It puts a lot of noise reduction into shadows. So if you're shooting from the shadow towards the light, the shadows will be processed heavily. And there is one actually shot, same thing, on Threads, you will see one of the shots comparison. I'm kind of in an arc, where the kind of pillars, and I'm looking towards the fountain kind of a thing. There is a shot. And if you look at the corners of those pillars, you will see there's a lot of heavy noise reduction done to those columns, a brick columns. You will see in the shadows a lot more processing going on versus the raw shot.
Yeah. I'm going to pull up your Threads account here.
And Paul, was that taken, was that posted on the 5th?
So there's one on the 5th, exactly. Yeah, because I was kind of testing them, when I had a free time, I was kind of going into the city and kind of checking. So it was it's not in a sequence in a sense, so you have to kind of scroll. So there's on the 5th, and there's one on, both of them actually on the 5th. So you can kind of see one with a fountain. And if you look at the corners of one of the images, you will see noise reduction on the left and the right corner. In a shadow, you will see noise. I'm not sure if it will be visible through the stream though. You really need to kind of see it in person.
Yeah, that's okay. You guys should be able to see that. Yeah. So this is that was the ProRAW.
The first one is the regular.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The one on the left is your regular RAW. Looks and I'm guessing when you mentioned the corners. With the ProRAW, it actually boosts up the darkness where you can actually see the details in the upper corners.
Right, and you know what? Another giveaway in the ProRAW, the ceiling, completely noise reduction applied to the ceiling. Those 3 sections in the ceiling, it's totally smoothed out, completely smoothed out. Versus the RAW shot has slight grain to it.
Oh yeah, I can see it without even zooming in, but there it is. Yeah, interesting. So if you're listening to this podcast after the fact, go to Paul's Threads account and look for the entry on August 5th, and you'll be able to see these images. The other set of images is some more of this wonderful architecture, and I take it this is in Harrisburg, and that'll be the RAW and the ProRAW, and then now you've zoomed in and you can see a difference here for sure. the one on the left is the ProRAW, everything's smoothed out. The one on the right is the RAW, and you get the green and all that stuff. And I think the raw image will produce a much better end result after editing, for sure.
I like it better. Honestly, I like it better. It has downsides. The raw has downsides because the dynamic range is not that great. So it will kind of fall apart at night because in ISO and all this technical stuff. So the ProRAW probably will give you better results. However, daytime or even evening, me personally, from now on, the RAW is my go-to.
Yeah. There's Dave. Have we talked you into shooting RAW yet?
Like I said, every so often I do give a test. A test. So, but me going with regular RAW, not ProRAW, that may be an extra little bit of step. Mainly because I am not necessarily an intentional photographer, for lack of a better, maybe a term I'm using made up here, but a lot of times when I take my photos, they're more, I'm out doing something or I see something that's happening and I, get out the camera and take a quick photo. And it's not necessarily, if I was going on a photo walk and planning ahead and everything else, that would be a little bit different. But it's not, it's something I'm always willing to experiment. Willing to experiment. And honestly, I could see me trying RAW, ProRAW, and JPEG. Because it's not that hard to take 3 different photos. And, that way, because like you said, you need that practice and the experience of taking a true RAW photo and doing the extra steps of processing it. It's, for me, it's beyond editing. It's actually processing it into a finished product before you do any stylistic editing, if you will.
Yeah. I find that a raw image, you got to expose them pretty good to begin with, right? You got to have something good to start with, I think, because if you overexpose it too much, you're into processing it basically 2, maybe 3 times. Once for the highlights, once for the shadows, and then blending them and all that stuff. And basically that's like HDR work, but you want to try to avoid that. Again, I find a lot of my raw stuff is a little overexposed compared to what I think I'm going to get. But if you get one that's shot just right, boy, oh boy, it's so, the sharpness is there, even with the noise. But you can take it into Lightroom Mobile or even on the desktop, and bring that, get rid of some of that noise with the noise reduction, and you still got a really, really good quality image. And like Dwight says in the chat here, he says, I cannot shoot anymore unless I shoot in RAW. I've become hypersensitive to the overprocessing that occurs with ProRAW, JPEG, and hike files. And I don't know, applause for Paul. I'm starting to get that kind of vibe myself with what I've been shooting with RAW lately. And it doesn't really matter, in my opinion, which camera app you use. If it's shooting just straight RAW, it's going to be very similar in whatever app you use. But the processing, that's where the magic happens. That's all depending on your taste too. Do you do most of your editing on the desktop, Paul?
I'm a mobile. I told you.
Oh, right. You did.
Full on mobile. Everything that has been taken with an iPhone, everything's get processed on an iPad. I don't really touch my computer. I use my computer for work and heavy workloads and stuff like that, photo shoots and, all this stuff. So I don't want to, people think, hey, like I'm just mobile and, you can live. People do actually live with it. I know a lot of YouTubers, some YouTubers, iPad's their life. But I do professionally. I shoot professionally, so I need to process, let's say, 2,000 images. So there is no way I can do that on an iPad. However, 90%, this is it. iPad, like 90% of my workflow, iPad. This is my life.
Yeah. Well, I don't have an iPad, but so I've been working with I've been doing a little bit of my processing on my Mac, on my iMac. These old eyes are getting older every year, and I mean, I can do it on the phone and love my results, but I've been kind of playing around with it in Affinity Photo on the Mac. It's just nice to get a better view of what the result is. And spoiler alert, Dwight Broman is in the chat room, and even he doesn't know this yet, but if he agrees to it, which I think he will, he's going to be on in not the next show, not the one after that, but the one after that. And I've been talking about having him on for quite some time, but he's got an amazing desktop workflow for his iPhone photos. So, no pressure, Dwight, but, we're having you on. So that's going to be a good one too. But I'm kind of liking the desktop editing process. I'm liking the results I get. Have you used Affinity Photo on the iPad?
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, I can go in so many territories. I'm trying to be reserved. I do have Affinity Photo, Lightroom. I've used Affinity Photo on a desktop. I'm pretty good with Photoshop or Affinity Photo. I've been using those softwares for years. So I have Affinity Photo on my iPad as well. I bought it right away as soon as I got iPad. And maybe not to spoil anything, the images that you're gonna show, I'm actually gonna touch on Affinity Photo in that section. Like when you're gonna reveal some images, we're gonna discuss those two images.
Okay, cool.
Later in the show.
Yeah, because in our recent photo segment, Dave and I are just going to do two each, and then we've got two from Paul that we're going to talk about. So really looking forward to that. And Dwight says, bring it. So yes, we got him booked. Let's touch a little bit on what Halide's done. Do you have Halide, Paul?
Yeah, so I've purchased three apps. It was basically Pro camera that I bought before, and I'm like, all right, I need to explore other cameras as well. Halide was another choice, and I have a camera. I don't want to dig into my app store, but there is another a camera app that I actually bought before, and it's still up to date. So I re-downloaded that app, and there is another app made by, I'm not sure how to say it properly. Reheld.
Oh, Reheld, yeah.
Reheld, yeah.
Yep.
That company makes another pro camera. It's not like slow motion.
Well, there's
cameras,
Reflex.
Reflex, I think that's what it's called.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So I've downloaded that app as well, and I had them for a trial, and I've used them all, and I found that's what I found as far as ProRAW. They all processing them identically. So I found that I took actually in my threads, if you'll see, I took a picture of there is a small toy, like a cow toy on my table. If you'll kind of scroll, and you can kind of see that I've taken with all those three. I use all those three apps just to see how different they're gonna be. You know what? I'm sorry, not that one. It's not that one. I'm sorry. I have to dig further down. I'm sorry, not that one. It was for a shutter speed. Ignore. I don't think I posted it.
Oh, okay.
I think,
Okay.
yeah, never mind. Because like lately, I've been posting so many different camera things.
Yeah,
My mind is a little confused.
it could
But
be a little
so,
overwhelming at times.
yeah, I think I was discussing that with my friend actually. If I'll find some results, maybe I can send it to you later, like off the show.
Okay.
And so I put that animal actually on the table with a controlled light and everything, and I used those 3 cameras, took exact same shot with the ProRAW, and the result was basically identical on all 3 apps that I had. And that way I kind of unsubscribed from all of them. I kept my Pro camera, and if I need to shoot ProRAW, I'm gonna just use the Apple just default camera.
Yeah.
But I know you want to talk about Halide, the new feature that they're going to introduce. I mean, they already actually introduced that feature. It was it was introduced not long ago, right? Process Zero.
Yes, it was only last week, I think. It came out, and so and so myself and Dwight in the chat here, and I think a couple others were really trying to dig in to see what this was, because at first I thought it was a RAW file, but that didn't make sense to me. Dwight ended up finding out on Reddit from one of the developers, Sebastian, that it was basically it's a single shot that is kind of turned into a HEIF file, and in Halide there's a when you're in the image viewer or the gallery view thing and you select one of these raw files that you shot with bare raw, not ProRAW, there's a little button at the bottom with a little plus minus, and it's the image lab, and you hit that and you can adjust the exposure, like the EV of the file, to brighten it or darken it, and then hit save, and then that just saves that as I don't know if you can go HEIF or JPEG, or if it's just HEIF. Maybe you can do either one depending on your settings, but it saves it as a shareable file, and it looks exactly like the RAW. And I thought, okay, this is pretty cool. And I was playing around with that a little bit, but I'm gonna kind of go on a bit of a tangent here. I found another guy on Threads who is working on a camera app, and in order to get into the test flight, into the beta, you have to be on the iOS 18 beta. Well, since I'm foolish enough to put the betas on everything I have, I thought, okay, I'm going to try this, because he put a couple of sample images on there. He has found a way, and it's called Fig, F-I-G. This camera app is called Fig. It's not in the App Store. It's nowhere yet, other than in test flight. And he has found a way you can shoot a file that looks just like a Process Zero file from Halide, but you can shoot it as a hike and have it instantly, right from capture. He's bypassed that Process Zero thing that Halide has, and basically it's a single shot that's got all the noise reduction taken off of it. There's no deep fusion, there's no HDR. It looks just like the RAW file. I've taken in his app, I took like a RAW file, and there's different ones. There's so it's called normal, and I took a normal under the normal setting, which is basically this Process Zero, quote unquote, and it looks exactly like the RAW. And I can't wait till he puts this thing live. So he is going to be on the show, not on the next show. The next show happens to be coming out the same day the iPhone announcement. So that's what that one's going to be about. And then the one after that is going to be this Christian Sheehan is his name. He's coming on to talk about Fig. And I don't know if it's going to be released by then. I have no idea what his timeline is. And then we'll have Dwight on the one after that. But it's just amazing how he's managed to do that. So anyway, so getting back to Halide with Process Zero, it's I was able to take a raw shot, and this is kind of spoiling one of my shots for later, but I took a raw shot. I think the EV was like -1. I took a couple, one at just 0 or whatever, and it was too bright, so I brought the exposure down. And I was able to get the exposure right and then save it out as a Process Zero image, and I really like it. I really, really, really like it. It's sharp, it's crisp, it has a bit of noise in it. Halide's sales pitch for this Process Zero is that it's kind of film-like, and it kind of is, because back in the film days, when you shot, with film, if your ISO was set to 400 or higher or whatever, then you had some grain in the image, depending on the film, of course, too. I guess the film speed is what determined that. But that's what this Halide Process Zero does, and it's pretty cool. You get a shareable file that looks like the raw file. So I don't know. We're kind of getting away from the raw versus JPEG thing here, but it's I don't know. I used to shoot raw when I had a DSLR, and then of course with the iPhone it didn't have raw until the 6S, I believe. And then I got back into raw a little bit then, and then I got back out of it. I was kind of bounced around, but I gotta say I'm back into shooting raw again, and it's like Dwight says, it's something that once you start doing, it's hard to get away from it. Now, admittedly, when it's darker, I will probably just shoot ProRAW, because you got to have that noise reduction, I think. I mean, you could process the heck out of a raw file to make it look good, but I do like the way a ProRAW shot comes out, because even if the shadows are too dark, then you can always get that detail back out of them. And it's so much easier to get detail out of the shadows than it is to get the highlights back. I'm sure you've probably found that in your shooting.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. To make Apple community happy, I have just today we actually been testing in my community. Like, I still friends with Android people. There is a huge community that we're still friends. We still hug and everything. So we were comparing the Pixel 9 Pro, Halide Process Zero, and I think they're gonna kill me, but I'm gonna reveal the secret. Even Android people liked it, the Process Zero file. It's very natural. So
that's interesting.
It tells something.
Yeah. I don't know if I've ever seen a raw image from an Android phone.
Go to my Instagram. If you'll go to my Instagram, like I said, I switched in 2020. Why am I saying 2000? I'm old. 2024. So from January 2024, and from January 2024 till now, iPhone shots. Everything that is before that, all those shots, basically Samsung RAW shots.
Oh, okay.
So if you want to kind of explore the Android photography, the Samsung particular, all my Instagram page is basically Samsung shots. S21 Ultra, S22 Ultra, S23 Ultra, and then I switched.
Yeah. Okay, so quick question. Which one of those devices did you find to be the best? Because I'm hearing the S21, S22 might have been the better ones for image quality.
So me personally, just my personality, I don't go into a lot of debates in a sense, like a nitpick on certain. I like photography, if that makes sense. We
Yep.
can go into technical details too deep that we kind of lose that artistic aspect of conversation and appreciation and everything like that. So, of course, throughout the generations, you can kind of see mostly the zoom camera got upgraded, not the main sensor necessarily. I mean, yes, it got better just a bit. Like if you like really pixel peep, but in general, it's still nice images. Like I said, I've been shooting for a long time, and it's fine. It never bothered me that much. Like, and I can say, oh wow, this camera is now it's blowing my mind. No, it was a 15% upgrade a year after year, like with an iPhone. It never blows your mind in reality. I know there is a people who's always upgrading and all this stuff, and marketing works. I get it. But in general, if you compare, the upgrades are very minor, and especially if you shooting with a real camera, just in general, like, you know, I have camera here in a backpack. Like if you're shooting with a full sensor and you know potential of the camera, you more linear or forgiving, as I can say, to a phone capture. You start, you know, I don't really nitpick in my images too much. I just want to go and create and okay, like in my mind, I'm gonna go and create like a slow shutter shots today, and I'm gonna go and try to create that. So I don't really like sit and really like nitpick every single phone to a minute detail. However, yes, they were, you know, they were getting better and better year after year, like, but not drastically, like 15%.
Yeah. And I guess I kind of brought that up because in Shane Mostyn's group, there's a lot of iPhone users, a lot of Android users, and there's been some discussion now and again about the S24 Ultra actually, you know, going backwards in quality. I believe, and I think it has something to do with Expert RAW, but I think there was an update that came out recently that kind of fixed things. So, you know, people are a little happier again. I
have images in my photos. Like I said, I'm still in the community. We still share images, raw images with each other, and I have S24 Ultra images. Try to compare them to a Pixel 9 Pro and an iPhone 15. And like I said, iPhone and S24 Ultra, as far as raw shots, the Samsung has tendency to smear corners. If you want to nitpick that, and if it's a deal breaker for you, then Samsung is no go for you. Basically, like if you look at the corner, you can see it's not as sharp corner to corner on the Samsung shot versus an iPhone. It was never a deal breaker for me. Like I said, I'm more forgiving to a certain degree. But Samsung pretty close to an iPhone, like a raw shots. However, Pixel tend to lean a lot on the noise reduction. It kind of turned, this is not no go for me. Like I prefer more Samsung shots than Pixel shots, and iPhone, of course. I love them. They're great.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, like I say, I really like the way the iPhone renders images. Is like, and I guess when I'm talking about that, I have to talk about JPEG images because, but I do like the way the raw files turn out, and you know, it's photography is subjective, and you know, there's people that are going to say the Pixel is the best phone. There's good people going to say the Samsung's the best, Huawei, Xiaomi. There's a few other ones, and they're all great cameras. They're all fantastic cameras, and it all just depends on, you know, what your taste is and all that stuff. But you know, I don't know what else we could talk about when it comes to the RAW versus ProRAW without, you know, basically recording a whole new show to get into the meat and potatoes of raw photography. So I think we'll end that part of it there. And but before we move on, Dave, is there any questions that you have? Because I know you shoot live photos a lot, and you just don't do raw that much. So, did you have any questions that?
No, honestly, I was more just kind of soaking as much in as I could. Just because I don't have the experience with shooting raw photos or even ProRAW photos, because I do use live photos an awful lot. And also because of the individual who's passed out on the table next to me here, when she's not passed out, the 5-month-old cat, that live photo just seemed to be able to capture when she's moving around and acting all crazy.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my default why I go with the live photo. Also, a lot of times when I'm out on a run, I have taken photos in the past where I don't, especially during a race, not so much in the last couple of years, but before, I didn't necessarily want to stop to take a photo, so I took a photo while still running. And the live photo does a really good job getting that bounciness that you get when you're running, to get a really good photos. That's another reason why I really haven't focused that much on the raw photos.
Yeah. Well, it's not for everybody, and the other thing is you need an editor that can process them. I find Lightroom Mobile to be probably the best on the iPhone for sure. I'm having good results with Affinity Photo on the Mac, but Photomator does it. I think Snapseed can even do it. There's a lot of different apps that can do it. With Lightroom Mobile, you need to get the subscription for it, in order to process the raw files and get into some of the masking and things like that. I bought a year's subscription to Lightroom Mobile, and then I've now since canceled it, but I've still got up until I think it's October or something like that to use it. Gosh, I'm beginning to think I might have to renew for another year. I don't know. I've been playing around with different raw editors, but there's also Raw Power. Raw Power was made by the team who did Aperture on the Mac, and it's a very good editor. Since I've started playing around with this stuff again, I haven't tried Raw Power, but I will. The nice thing about Raw Power is there's a Mac version, an iPad version, and an iPhone version. They all work exactly the same way. All the adjustments do exactly the same thing. So that's one nice thing about Raw Power. And I bought it back when you could buy it and have it for good. That's it. There's no subscription. I don't know what their model is now, but so that's okay. So that's where my mind's at. I'm playing around with different raw editors. I'm really enjoying what I'm getting from raw photos. Great and all. I can adjust that to tone that down a bit, but like I say, we could go into this, take a real super deep dive into it, but I think we've kind of covered the basics pretty good here. And so I think what we'll do now is we'll jump into our recent photos.
Now, real quick, Greg, because you did mention this, and I'm looking this up. So for Raw Power, is that put out by the developer Gentleman Coders?
Yes.
Okay. That's still a one-time purchase, it looks like.
Oh,
it's
is it?
$10,
Okay.
$10 US, it looks like. Because I do not see any subscription pricing or anything else. And there's no free version that you can get and then pay the subscription.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. So, I've got our images, and you should be able to see this one. Now, folks, if you are listening to this on the podcast, in your podcast player, you should be able to see these images on your screen in your podcast player. Most of them, anyway. I know Spotify doesn't do it, but they even show up in CarPlay. Don't be looking at them while you're driving. I'm just saying that's a possibility. But we're going to start with one of yours, Paul, and then we'll cycle through Dave and myself, and come back to you again for your second one. But so basically, all we do here is we just talk about the image, say whatever you like about it, and Dave and I will certainly give our thoughts on it as well.
So I'm going to just describe it more in a technical way. So again, since I'm shooting professionally and I've used camera before to stitch images together, just in general, I was very into HDR. Way back, it was introduced into iPhone. If you know that guy, Trey Recklift.
Oh yes. Yeah.
I bought a lot of tutorials from him before when he was on Google Plus, if you remember.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Man, I'm aging myself. So what happened is, so I was really into HDR just in general. And I was like, my goal just in general with the mobile photography, introduce same concept into mobile as well. So I'm not sure if you look at the metadata of this image. This is a 48 megapixel shot. This is a 3 shots combined together with a different exposures in Affinity Photo. Affinity Photo has an option to merge HDR images, like 3 different layers.
And it does it very well.
And then it does it very, very well. So this is 3 ProRAW shots, different exposure. -1, 0, and +1 for the highlights, shadows, and midtones. Affinity Photo was software that I used to combine everything together. I exported into 16-bit TIFF, and then I imported back to Lightroom and processed it. And this image is just unbelievably sharp and pristine. If you have a monitor, like probably people will never figure out it was taken with the phone.
Well, I'm looking at it on my monitor, and it's basically the whole height of the screen, and however wide it is. But those trees that are lit up on the left-hand side, so crisp and clear. It's unbelievable. I don't know how anybody's going to be able to see this like I am right now, because you sent these to me and I've put them on my computer and for this, and then as I do with everybody's, I delete them afterwards because they're not mine. But the clarity and the sharpness is so spot on with this image. The fact that you did it in 48 megapixel, that's a plus. That's definitely a plus. And the
final file was like roughly 250 megabytes just to combine everything into one. So of course I exported in JPEG. It got smaller, but the TIFF file was huge.
Yeah, and you've obviously used a tripod for this, right?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. So okay, in your processing and development of this image, did you do any sharpening? And if so, how much?
I usually have my flow just in general. I usually try to keep it. If I do sharpening, like in Lightroom, if you're familiar with Lightroom, you can kind of apply, let's say 10% of sharpening.
Yeah.
But then there is another slider. It says a mask.
Yeah.
So if you hold your finger on a screen and then slide a mask slider, you can only apply sharpening to a specific, like just only edges, for example.
The edges, yeah.
Yeah, so that's what I usually do. And I usually apply, like, honestly, now since I'm shooting in RAW, like, my sharpening usually like 10%. That's what I usually go for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Subtlety goes a long way when it comes to sharpening, because you could easily over sharpen an image, that's for sure. Thoughts on that, Dave?
No. Well, let me ask you: is this the state capitol building?
It is the state capitol building.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, especially getting the golden statue on top, where it's lit up and it's highly reflective, and I can see where the stacking would definitely help with that.
Of course,
because you have, like you said, everything's just you're right. If you came out and said, obviously processing wasn't like a single shot with an iPhone, but still taken with an iPhone, that a lot of people would not believe that.
I want to retest this shot actually, since like after my whole journey ProRAW, I want to retest exactly the same thing, but just shoot in RAW.
Ah, yeah.
Because ProRAW has processing, remember.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to remove that processing, try to replicate exactly the same thing, but just shoot in RAW. The only problem with an iPhones, where Samsung, they do allow you to do that. You see, like now I'm gonna take that knife and turn it. No, Samsung does let you shoot more than like 5 seconds of exposure, 10 seconds of exposure, 30 seconds of exposure in the RAW mode, versus iPhone only ProRAW, where the night mode kicks in. You cannot shoot more than a zero, like 1 second basically, and have exposure in the RAW.
Yeah.
There's a limitation.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how you make out with that, especially with that 1 second limitation.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll take one night shot. I mean, just for the shadows, maybe I'll use ProRAW. Like, we'll see. Like, I have to rethink the whole thing.
Yeah. It's a good challenge for sure. Now you got me thinking maybe I'd like to try that. Yeah. So, well, I mean, it's a nice shot. It's nice and smooth. It's very, very crisp. All those sets of trees, like there's some on the right, some in the middle, and the ones that are lit up, they're all the same type of tree, but the clarity and the sharpness is just off the charts. Mm-hmm. So much detail up in the dome. You can see all the different sections of the I don't know if they're tiles or what they are, but just the detail is just amazing. So that's a good one for sure. So next we got one of Dave's, and Dave likes to go all out with his editing, to say the least.
So yeah, this was one I took on a run, and it was just I liked the way the house was kind of framed by the trees when I came up. But this wasn't a big extravagant house. They're in this neighborhood. There are further away some older, more grand houses. I just liked the way it kind of just fit in there when I was running up the street and just saw it. And like I said, just having the big tree with the driveway there, and I edit, obviously, when I edit in a program and it does put a watermark or the name of the program on it, I like to leave it there because I figure that I can either pay for it or I can give them free advertising. And so since this is a free version, it's like I understand that it's the trade-off I'm doing. Mm-hmm. So I did leave it as Picasso. And of course, it's another, as a lot of programmers do, put a little pun name in their program. But for this one, I just kind of liked how it had that painting feel to it. Especially like you can see in the sky, it almost looks like brush strokes.
Yeah.
And in the grass area there, where it's kind of stepped up to the actual house itself.
Yeah. I'll just mention real quick, a buddy of mine who lives right in town here. I saw him in the chat room earlier, Randy O'Hara. He shoots a little bit with the iPhone, but he also has his Canon. But I've seen him put this painterly effect on some like wildlife shots or whatever, and they really look good. Now it's a lot more subtle than what you have here, but still, the painterly effect can really make an image look nice. Mm-hmm. And I really like what you've done with this one. It's nice and bright. It's saturated, and I mean, it's not to the point where, like, I think it was the last show you had one that was completely obliterated with your editing. That
Yes.
it was
Yes.
hard to tell what it was. But this one here, you can still see the house and the trees and everything else, and it looks nice. It's a pretty cool rendition.
I think composition, just in general, goes as far, like, not the editing itself, just in general, like, because that's what people tend to look right away. But I think composition will make people's photography go a long way, just in general. Like, if you master that composition, like just the foreground, background, middle ground, it gives any picture a nice dimension, and it kind of, it feels right, versus just a snapshot. I like when images are composed properly.
Yeah, and this has that.
Like
This
there's some kind of a framing happens.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Just gonna really quick here show Dale Lotherington's comment on your photo, Paul. Exposure blend. This is what he's suggesting, I think. Capture in blue hour so you have more light and stay there, and do nothing for 1.5 hours to take another photo in lower exposure for the lights to blend as light and layer. Well, Dale is a master at blending for sure. So
That's
what do you think?
That's a good suggestion, actually.
Yeah, he's going to make it hard for you, that's for sure.
Hey, I'm all in. I'm such a geek as far as pictures. It's not just for me, photography in general. It's like solving a puzzle. I love this stuff. So
Yeah. So that's Dave's first one. So my first one, this is the one that I was talking about. That it's a Process Zero from Halide. What caught my eye here was the fact that we're still in August and this tree is showing this much color already. I think it might be a silver maple. I'm not sure, but there's been a few trees around that are starting to turn, and I'm hoping that the autumn season goes much longer than normal around here. And if this is any indication, like it's starting now, I love shooting color, the color in the leaves and that, it's just totally awesome. But what I've, I'm just so impressed with RAW now and with Process Zero even, and even what I'm getting from this camera app called Fig, the clarity and sharpness in that is just for such a small sensor in a phone, it could get such a good, sharp, clear image. It's just ridiculous in my mind. It's not, it's not a full frame, 50 megapixel camera, but what you're getting from it is just amazing. And something like this, I wouldn't even hesitate to blow it up like 3 feet by 4 feet, or there's some ridiculous size like that. Even though it's only a 12 megapixel, I think there's enough detail there that could be done. But I just included. I had another one I wanted to put in, but I put this one in because I just wanted to kind of showcase the sharpness and the clarity that's available in these little sensors.
It gives me, honestly, I'm so glad that they did that, Process Zero. I know there is some marketing going on. However, I'm glad that they did that, and they brought photography, let me put it that way, I don't want to say normal photography, but just like nostalgia back. Because everything became HDR. And if you look at the phone reviews and all those battles between phones and stuff like that, like, not to go on tangent, but I know Sony Xperia, because Sony Xperia does not really process a lot of, it doesn't do HDR well. And it was always losing to other phones, for example, because people did not like that it did not do any HDR. They were thinking overblown highlights and all this stuff. This is kind of considered to be as a bad processing. So I'm kind of glad that Halide brought old photography back, as I can say, and
Yeah.
it's kind of I like it. I like it a lot.
Yeah. Well, Sebastian DeWitt, I think that's all he ever shoots is RAW. And he has a really cool editing style that he does in Lightroom. And people have been bugging him to put out presets or whatever. And to my knowledge, I don't think he's ever said what his workflow is. But his images are always just really, really cool. And he's just mastered how to shoot RAW on an iPhone for sure.
Right.
And of course, being a camera developer, and he used to work for Apple
Right.
and develop apps at Apple, and so I mean he's very knowledgeable. Ben Sandofsky is brilliant as well. So I mean they're a powerhouse team of developers, and they've been able to, like you say, give us old school photography back and the nostalgic look of photography. It's a lot of fun. It's pretty cool. JD in the chat says, this is a bit of a tangent, but what the heck, we'll get these as they come up. The iPhoneography podcast, do you think it's worth going to photography school? I wonder, are you talking the iPhone photography school? Because if you are, then yeah, if it's something that you think you're interested in doing, because I know a couple of folks right in town here that have taken some courses there, and they say they're very good. Why not? Sometimes it's hard to learn everything from, shows like this where we can't cover everything. But there's Dwight says he started with the iPhone photography school and it changed his life. So there's someone right there who has taken a course there and it's done wonders. So, but they've got so many talented instructors there. I probably wouldn't hesitate. I've even thought of trying to take something there myself, but I just never got into looking into it. But yeah, why not?
I would recommend. So the way I'm a self-taught basically person. However, I did take some courses, and I still highly recommend that. It's still valid training option. If you remember, there was a website. It still exists. It's called lynda.com. Ly. There is a different spelling. Yeah. It's not like
Lynda.
Yeah.
And actually, they were that was bought by LinkedIn, I believe.
Yeah, I think so. And there is a photographer by the name Ben Long, Ben Long, Long. He's an old school photographer, but however, lynda.com has a lot of courses with him. He goes into fundamental photography, and it's a nice resource to use actually to kind of to start and understand composition and everything.
Actually, I just checked. lynda.com does redirect to LinkedIn Learning.
Ah, okay. Yeah. But I mean, those courses will still be there, I'm sure. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Alrighty. So this one here, I thought this was very interesting, Paul, and I think I might know how you took it, but I'll let you go. I'll let you explain it.
2 exposures. So ProRAW for the top portion of the image, and the long exposure raw image. I use the app called Reheld.
Reheld?
Yeah. Because
okay.
it kind of...
Well, was it a raw long exposure?
Yes.
Okay, that would have been re-expose.
Re-expose then. I'm sorry. Right here. I have 2 of them right here. I have a re-expose and reheld. Yes, you're right. Yes, re-expose. You're correct. So re-expose for the water, and then just the bridge and the sky and everything else, it's ProRAW.
I never thought of doing that with re-expose. I've never thought of doing, the static parts in a ProRAW, and then just using re-expose to do the moving stuff like water or whatever. But that's interesting because when I've tried to process an image done with re-expose. Well, I actually shot one time that was 3 exposures: the overexposed, underexposed, and the perfect exposure, and put them together, and do all the erasing and all that stuff and masking, whatever needed to be done. But yeah, I think I might try this technique sometime.
So the reason I did a combination of both, because re-expose, I found that it's very hard to nail highlights and shadows with it, because it's a kind of a long exposure shot, versus ProRAW gives you good fundamental to start from.
Yeah.
And then you can capture the water with a re-expose.
Yeah. I found with re-expose, you have to underexpose a lot. You can get the detail back out of the shadows, but if you overexpose anything, then it becomes like a magenta color, and it's just you cannot recover it.
Right.
So it's a very it's a very tricky app to use at times. But I think you're onto something by using the 2 different processes and putting them together. I think it works well.
And it's done in Affinity Photo.
Yeah, that's cool. Thoughts there, Dave?
Yeah, just how I really like the whirlpool effect down below.
Many people actually die there.
Oh, really?
So basically, people just tend to get on their boat and don't realize something's there, and then straight in.
Oh, wow.
Because the water just goes in circles, like very heavy and fast.
I'm surprised they don't have something out.
They have signs now, but yeah, it's a very dangerous. On Susquehanna River has signs now, like especially at that area.
Is it a dam? Like the bridge? Does it become a dam and goes down on the other side or something? Oh yeah, okay, that's crazy. Well, it's another cool shot. Go ahead, Dave.
And also the leading lines going away. Even though the whirlpool, is dangerous, it acts like an anchor almost.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then that's because it's sent and then going away like that.
Yeah, it really draws you in, eh? Yeah.
Now, Paul, who was I actually was able to bring up LinkedIn Learning. What was the individual's name that you said?
Ben Long. Ben, like Ben.
LNOLO.
Ben Long.
Yep. He's still there. Yep. In fact,
Awesome.
there's
He's an awesome guy.
Yep. In fact, there's one updated that was just 2 months ago about Photography Foundation's Exposure Part 1. That's a 2 hour 40-minute video.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they have a free version, and I think you can pay for an entire subscription to get the whole package.
Well, I have LinkedIn Learning through my work.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah. So if I wanted to on my own, because I'm on my work computer now, if I wanted to, I could just go in here, and it looks like you said, tons of photography here. Yeah, there's part 2 of Exposure, which is 1 hour and 40 minutes. There's a couple of, little shorter videos, so don't get scared. But, like lens speed, he has a quick little 3-minute one. But yeah, I would say it looks like it's going to be a very good in-depth way to learn things. And also I'll say that if you're looking just for not necessarily iPhone photography, but just general like photography basics, if you have a community college that's nearby, most of the time they're really reasonable price wise, and now with everything back opened up, you can interact with people. Hopefully they'll have like photo walks or something else going on where you can bounce ideas off of people too, and you can see what other people are doing, which I know always helps.
Yeah. Well, that's maybe I'll get that link from you, Dave, for Ben's course, and we'll just throw it in the show notes. What the heck?
Okay,
People
yeah.
might be interested enough to have a look. Okay, so now on to your second one, Dave.
Okay.
This looks very Andy Warholish.
That's honestly what I was going for.
Yeah.
The photo in the center is the unedited photo.
Oh, okay.
And it literally is, I was just starting to run the water in the shower just to get the temperature right. And that bathroom just faces east. So it was in the morning, and the morning sun was coming in. And I just liked the way the sun, especially with the long exposure, was just hitting the waters going by. And with the shaving can and the razor up there. And then when I put it in, I'm trying to remember, I'm trying to remember the app I used to do the different colorations. I want to say Camera Plus.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I did that in because they have the different filters. And I just kind of like, because they give you like, oh, here's the different filters and how it all looks out as a preview. And I was like, when I was doing it, I was like, I kind of like the look of the different colors as a mosaic of the same image. Like you said, straight Andy Warhol. And so I did kind of the different colors and how put it in Pic Collage. Again, I used a free version, so I'd leave it down there and put a rainbow background on it. Just kind of, because I just thought like a bland background with all this color would just kind of wouldn't be as good. And like I said, sometimes when I was doing it, was like, it feels like a Warhol.
Yeah. Well, I think the background really adds to the image too.
Yeah. Which I really go back right here. I just kind of searched my previous purchases.
Yeah.
Camera Plus still have it, baby. Legacy. Man, I told you.
Camera Plus was the first.
Yes, it was.
Camera app, the first third-party camera app I downloaded for my iPod Touch before I got an iPhone.
Yeah.
So I have a long history with it, and yeah.
Well,
I told you when I... Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Yeah, I told you, it's like when I got an iPhone back and I opened up that app store, like I said, it's kind of like you open up the door to your old house that you didn't live in for like 10 years. And you're like, man, this chair is still here. This sofa is still here. The TV is still on the wall. It's like, what's going on here? So it was good.
Yeah, that's crazy. Camera Plus was the first third-party camera app I used as well. And what really got me onto it was I found some videos that Jack Hollingsworth did for... I'm not sure if it was for B&H Photo or if it was just for Tap, who was the developer of the original Camera Plus. Like it's changed hands since then, but he was talking, like he was showing how to, do manual white balance and all that stuff, and just improve your photos, and Jack's a good friend of mine now, but back then I didn't know who he was. I didn't know him from Adam, but. And I thought, oh, this guy's a genius, and I was really impressed with how he did that with the app, and so I started using Camera Plus, a lot back then, and I have a plaque here that's got 2012. I did a picture a day in 2012, and I'll bet you a lot of those were done with Camera Plus because it was the app to use back then.
Yeah, it was. I think the clarity filter changed the whole world.
Oh, it did. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say between that and the fact that it had a built-in stabilizer.
Mm-hmm.
It had a stabilizer where it wouldn't take a photo until you actually, it would hold off taking the photo till you were still enough. Before the iPhone had really good built-in stabilizers.
Yeah.
And I noticed that made a huge difference with photos that I was taking with the built-in app and other ones.
Yeah. Well, that's that's another creative edit by you, Dave. And I really didn't think that the center image was the original. I thought it was just yet another color added to it. Looking at it, I would think almost the one on the left of that, the left one in the center row, could have been the original. But that looks like it's just black and white, is it?
Yeah, that's it. Well, I did a little extra editing in terms of it's black and white, but I kept it's kind of hard to see the red stripe on the can.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah.
So because it's a Barbasol can, if you're familiar with that, with the red and white stripes on it. So I kept the red and the razor handle is orange.
Oh yeah.
So there's a little shading there, but yeah, the basically it's because of the way the light was coming in, the towel had a little bit of a morning hue to it, like a little reddish hue. And I think it's like an off-white. It's not like a stark white tile that's up there.
Right. Yeah.
So it's not like like you see what they call subway tile, where it's like stark white.
Yeah.
And even though I moved back to Pittsburgh over 20 years, and the Warhol Museum is not that far away from me, I've never been.
Oh, is that right?
There's an entire. Well, he's from here originally.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he is from Pittsburgh. His family lived here after he moved to New York to be famous. But yeah, there is an entire museum that is just Warhol related.
Right. Luke says he likes that you shoot in Heath and your creative edits. He relates most to your photography.
Oh, thank you, Luke.
That's cool.
That's appreciated.
And Luke is a fellow Canadian. Okay, so we'll get on to my last one. And this is the result of a failed attempt at getting a Milky Way panorama. Earlier in that evening, there wasn't a cloud in the sky. I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be great. I was going to go out and I was going to try what Shane Mostyn did on his YouTube channel, and that was do a panel, like a multi-shot panel of the Milky Way. And I had about an hour between sundown and moonrise to get this shot. So I went out to this location, and it's kind of out in the country. It's up on a big hill, overlooking a lot of stuff. And the clouds had different plans. So what do? I take a picture of my truck. and now the horizon, like the road that I was on was actually like this. But just so I didn't get a ribbon from Scott Baker about the horizon, I actually straightened it. So if you look at the clouds are in here. This is where it's kind of the horizon was this way. So it's tilted a little bit, but on purpose to make it look straight. And had I not said that, maybe nobody would notice. I don't know. But of course, there's nearby towns, and the lights really, reflected up into the clouds and just spoiled a lot of things. But actually, I think they kind of had to it. But when I went out there, I had no intention of shooting anything but the stars. So I didn't have a flashlight. And I'm thinking, okay, now that I'm going to shoot the truck, how am I going to light the darn thing? So I took my Apple Watch and I put on the flashlight thing, and I just walked along, and that's my watch creating those white lines in the side of the truck.
Wow.
And I mean, so I wish this would show the HDR version that I made in Lightroom Mobile, because the white lines really, really pop. And the clouds, in that bright area of the clouds, they really, really pop in the HDR version that Lightroom can give you. But only certain screens could show that, and I I don't think that this video is going to be going up on YouTube in HDR. In fact, I know it won't.
Yeah.
But and to put this in the show for the audio podcast, I don't think it would even display that way. But I've got it on Instagram. So if you go to my Instagram account, there's a link to my account in the show notes, and look for this picture. You'll see it should show up. If you have a phone that can display HDR, it should show up as HDR in Instagram, and it'll give you the full effect. But the funny thing was, I told ChatGPT to critique this image, my first edit of the image. And boy, did it critique it. It told me that the truck blended in too much with the background, the trees in the background. And so I had to brighten up the truck a little bit to give it a little more separation to make it brighter. It said that the lines from the light in the truck were too bright. And it was critiquing the HDR version, I believe. So I toned them down a little bit. And it said there wasn't enough detail showing in the road. It's a gravel road. So I put a linear mask on, and I brought some of I brought the exposure up a little bit and the texture up in the gravel road. So it's really, I tell you, if you want to have some fun with ChatGPT, tell it to upload an image and tell it to critique the image. It's like going to photography school in and of itself. It will give you a really, really spot on critique, and it's gonna be a great learning tool. I'm gonna use it for a lot of different things, I think, when it comes to critiquing. It was really cool. What I'll do is, when I put the pictures in the Facebook, on the Facebook page where we put the show notes and stuff, I will put in the critique that ChatGPT gave me, because I've got it saved, I think, as a screenshot, and it's pretty crazy how well
I just did that on my house image.
Oh yeah,
and it gave me a 7-point critique.
Yep.
Picking up all the details, even picking up the logo and getting the text right on the logo.
Oh yeah. The
with the Picasso.
Yeah.
Yeah, it says about style consistency. However, the logo or watermark in the bottom right might be a bit distracting as it stands out against an otherwise harmonious scene.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy what it can do. Luke wants to know what's causing the green tint around the tires. Well, right. There's black molding around the tires there. I think that's just basically a poor job on my part of editing that. You know, I could take the green down. I think maybe whether it's a white balance issue or what, I'm not sure, or a tint issue. But that's a good point. I should be able to fix that.
If you notice on the road just in front of the truck, it looks like there's a little bit of green tint on the road there.
Yeah.
So I don't know if just the black and green can get really related, especially when it's low light.
Yeah. It's just something that I really kind of didn't really pay attention to. I was trying to get the color of the truck itself to be as close to natural as possible, and it's kind of hard to do. But
I was just looking, since you said ChatGPT to critique your pictures, I actually found Trey Radcliffe fun photo critique ChatGPT.
Oh, really?
Trey Radcliffe, yeah, he has so I guess you can create like subreddit of ChatGPT, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah.
So I guess he created like own critique ChatGPT section where you can upload the image and it will critique. So I'll try it. It's awesome. I didn't know that you can do that.
I didn't know that either. Actually, it was Dale Lotherington who's in the chat room. He did it, and so Dale and Scott Baker and Mark Deves and Shane Mosden and myself we're the admins of Shane's Facebook group, and we have our own iMessage chat, and we talk about just about anything except administering to the Facebook group, pretty much. And Dale put he put in roast this image. So ChatGPT very comically roasted his image. So I did it, and yeah, it really it does a good job at roasting your image. And then I thought, gee, I wonder what it would do if I asked it to critique an image. And wow, it really surprised me. I was really pleased with what it could do. And I recommend if so. A lot of people don't like to have a critique done of their work, but you gotta do this. You gotta do this if you want to improve your work. This image was case in point. When I look at the before and the after, it's somewhat subtle, the differences between the two, but it definitely makes it a better image after so the critique will give you basically the pros and cons of the image. So it'll say what it likes about it, and then it'll say what needs to be improved. And I did all the steps that it said to improve the image, and it made it a better photo. So if you've never used ChatGPT before, and you know what, this whole AI thing in photography, like the Google Pixel phone is not anything I would be interested in because of all the stuff that it's doing in photography. But I am embracing AI to a certain point, and this is one of the points where I'm going to embrace it, because it gives you a good, honest critique, completely non-personal, because it's just a machine doing it. And you got to have thick skin when you get a critique of your photo, because you might not like what it says, but believe me, it's going to help you. It definitely will help you. And I want to find another picture to get critiqued now, because it's a lot of fun. If you're ever struggling with an edit or something like that, run it through ChatGPT and say, critique this photo. And it'll give you, funny. Yeah, it'll give you the steps that you need to do to make it a better image. Yeah, it's a really fun exercise for sure. Well, I guess we'll call it a night at that, because that was a very, very interesting conversation with you, Paul. So glad you could make it on. It's not like you had a whole ton of notice, but I'm glad you can make it. And we'll have to have you back again sometime, and talk about whatever else you're doing. And so I've got your website, your threads, and your Instagram links all in the show notes. Is there anywhere else that you want to say where people can find you, or does that pretty much cover it?
Pretty much, yeah. The website is basically business. Like, it's not mobile related to any.
Right. Yeah. Well, but if anybody's looking for a wedding photographer near Harrisburg, he's your guy. and the images are really, really good. I was looking at some of them the other day, and great job with that for sure. Thanks to everybody in the chat room for playing along, and we might not have hit every question, but we tried to get as many as we could. And so the next show is going to be all about the iPhone 16 announcement, and it'll be Dave and I know Mark Sadowski likes to get on with a show like that, so I'm going to hit him up and see if he wants to come on. Chances are it'll be a long one. Might run about 2 hours. Usually those Apple event shows usually do tend to go a little longer, but
yeah,
it'll be fun.
Even though we're not expecting major changes. What I would say, the rumors for the Pro, the cameras, not major changes. Screen, minor bump. Better cameras for the non-Pro. Are the biggest thing I'm hearing right now?
The biggest thing I'm hearing is 48 megapixel for the ultra wide.
Yeah.
Have you heard anything, Paul? Do you follow that kind of thing?
Yeah, I do. Like I said, I don't want to be, one of those like party crasher in a sense.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I have like always gentle expectations to anything like marketing and all this stuff, and just in general, I'm trying to look through that lens of marketing. I'm not really, me personally. Ultra wide is great. I barely use it, honestly. Regular wide, it's wide enough for me. Only occasions that I use ultra wide is inside of the churches or something like that, more if I want to show more of the environment inside. That's basically when I use ultra wide. I don't really use ultra wide outside. So ultra wide is very small amount of use in my flow. Most of the time it's a 3x and a main sensor. As far as 48 megapixels, that conversation, maybe you want to save it maybe for another time. I have a mixed relationship with
kind of a love-hate relationship.
48 and 12, and maybe that's another conversation they want to pin.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, definitely, because I'm a real fan of the 48, but there's things about the 12 megapixels that that I really like too, in the way that the sensor works and stuff. So yeah. Maybe we'll have you on again, and we'll talk about that one for sure.
Let me give you a little hint, just a hint. Try taking 12 megapixels, and if you have a software like Affinity Photo, you can upscale, you can up-res images. Yeah. There is a certain algorithm when it does it. When you up-res 12, let's say to 24 megapixels or even 48, if you really look side by side, I have a question there. So to me, those 48, because it's a pixel binning, and there are true 12 megapixels, and there is somewhat up-res happens. So and especially if you take 48 megapixel shots in a low light, you definitely try to take here's the thing maybe what you can do. Try to take night shots 48 megapixels and look at the shadows. You will see how mushy they are. So what I'm trying to say is those 48 megapixels for low light, they're problematic. Honestly, you would better off shooting 12 megapixels at night versus 48. So 48, it's not always great. That's what I'm trying to say. There is a battle between 12 and 48 in my flow, just in general.
Well, that makes sense, because the binning obviously will capture more light, per set of pixels, I guess. Yeah. We'll definitely keep that on the back burner, and who knows, maybe with the 16. Are you getting a 16?
I'm skipping. I usually try to do 2 years kind of a cycle. That's just me personally. Like I just don't feel as much as upgrade.
Yeah. Okay. And that's fair. Dave, I think you're talking about it, aren't you?
I'm thinking about mainly because my 13 will be paid off at the end of next month.
Yeah.
So the question is, do I want to wait and not? And admittedly, the phone payment is not much, because when I got this one, you get if you pay over time, you get the rebate. So literally, the phone's costing me $6 a month.
Oh, that's pretty good.
It's 33 minus the $27 rebate from Apple because of the trade-in I had and everything else. So it's one of those things of, yes, I'm going to save some money. Is it enough? Is the 16 a big jump from the 13? And what's happening on the 17? Because that's the other thing, is that I don't care about the iPhone 17 Air, the big rumor of the ultra thin. That's a design thing I don't care about. And I don't know if, the rumor of, are they going to step up the zoom even more, or is 5, that's physics limiting it, and can they do anything more with it? So, I mean, Ruth still has her 15 Pro Max. So and this phone was recently replaced under Apple Care because of issues. So, and it was my own dumb fault that caused the issue. So we'll see what the changes are, and do I really see a huge jump? Jump that, of course, we all, like Paul said about, it's going to be the most magical iPhone ever. It's going to be amazing, wonderful, amazing, wonderful, And that's another thing. That's another thing I just kind of I get a chuckle out of, is the supercuts they do, because they always pick like one word every year that everyone uses.
Yeah.
Amazing, magical, wonderful,
incredible. Yeah.
Incredible. Yeah. And then like The Verge or someone will put everyone who says incredible, and it's like a 4 minutes of incredible, amazing, incredible. And they've really, especially since I'm willing to say 21, they really put their production chops into making this almost a movie.
Yeah.
They put some pretty heavy, art directors and things. It isn't just people talking, handing it off to the next person and we got to see, what stupid thing is Craig Federighi going to do?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
What self-reference is he going to do to his hair? Like he did at WWDC.
Yeah.
When he parachuted in and he had his, the helmet that was shaped like his hair.
Yeah. Yeah.
What kind of stupid, because they always have that little stupid, fun thing.
Yeah.
So
Well, it'll be interesting how
Oh yeah.
what they come up with.
And just to remind everyone, it is on a Monday this year. We're not sure why they decide to not have it on the normally it is a Tuesday event, but they decide not to have it on the 10th. They decide to have it on the 9th.
Yeah. And I think the pre-order will probably go on the following Friday, and then availability the Friday after that.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, then they should be in people's hands in late September rather than October.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Oh yeah.
All right. Well, I guess we'll call it a show. Thank you, Paul, for coming on and for the wonderful discussion and the amazing images, and teaching us a little bit about how you got them too. That's I'll be curious to see how you make out with your redo, and if you actually follow through with what Dale suggested. And I'm going to try some of that myself. With the shooting at pre-dawn or pre-dusk or whatever and all that stuff. I'm kind of intrigued by how that'll work out. So. Thanks everybody for watching on the live stream, and thank you all for listening. I guess we will see you on the next one.
Have a great one, everyone.
Good night.